Picture this: you're standing at the edge of a cliff, the wind howling around you, your heart pounding so loud it drowns out everything else. Below you, the waves crash against jagged rocks, and every instinct screams at you to step back. But instead, you take a deep breath and leap. That moment, that split second between fear and action, is where true strength is forged. It's the same kind of courage the ancient Stoics wrote about 2,000 years ago, the same resilience Marcus Aurelius described when he said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Fear isn't something to avoid. It's the chisel that shapes us into something unbreakable. And today, we're going to explore exactly how to wield it. This isn't just another video about philosophy, it's a toolkit for life. Imagine having 24 exercises, each one designed to train your mind like a muscle, to face fear head-on and come out stronger on the other side. These aren't abstract ideas, they're battle-tested techniques drawn straight from Stoicism, the same philosophy that guided emperors, warriors, and thinkers through some of history's darkest moments. Whether it's the anxiety of a looming deadline, the dread of failure, or even the quiet fear of not being enough, these practices will help you meet it all with unshakable calm. Think of your mind as a fortress. Right now, the walls might feel thin, the gates shaky, but what if you could reinforce them brick by brick until nothing could shake your focus or steal your peace? That's what we're building here. Over the next 24 exercises, you'll learn how to disarm fear, reframe adversity, and cultivate a mindset that doesn't just endure challenges but thrives because of them. This is about more than just surviving. It's about mastering the art of turning obstacles into fuel. So if you're ready to forge a mind that's not just tough but unbreakable, let's begin. The journey starts now. What if you could erase half your worries overnight, not by changing the world, but by changing what you choose to focus on? That's the power of the first Stoic exercise, mastering the dichotomy of control. Picture a ship caught in a storm. The sailor can't command the wind or the waves, but he can adjust the sails, steady the rudder, and choose not to panic. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher born a slave, put it bluntly, "Some things are within our power while others are not. Your opinions, your desires, your reactions, those are your sails. The weather, the past, other people's choices, those are the storms." And here's the life-changing truth. Anxiety doesn't come from the storm itself, but from straining to control what was never yours to command. Take a minute to reflect on your own life. How much energy do you waste wrestling with things you can't change? Traffic jams, a critical coworker, even the weather. Now imagine redirecting that energy toward what you can influence: your preparation, your attitude, your next move. The ancient Stoics called this mental discipline prosoph, the art of attention. Every evening, they'd ask themselves one piercing question: where did I forget the dichotomy of control today? Try it tonight. Maybe you stressed over a delayed flight instead of using the time to read. Maybe you agonized over a friend's opinion instead of strengthening your own resolve. Here's the practice. For the next 24 hours, catch yourself every time you're gripped by something outside your control. Pause, breathe, then ask, is this mine to fix? If not, let it pass like a cloud. If it is, act without complaint. This isn't about giving up, it's about focusing your power where it actually matters. Because when you stop fighting the waves, you start riding them, and that's when the real journey begins. Now let's turn to a Stoic practice so powerful it can transform dread into gratitude in seconds: negative visualization. The Romans called it premeditatio malorum, the deliberate act of imagining the worst-case scenario, not to dwell in fear, but to disarm it. Seneca, the great Stoic thinker, wrote that he robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand. Picture this: you wake up one morning to find your bank account emptied, your job gone, your closest relationships strained. For a moment, let that discomfort sink in. Then open your eyes. The relief you feel isn't just luck, it's a revelation. Suddenly, what you do have, the steady paycheck, the roof overhead, the people who stand by you, feels less like routine and more like a gift. This isn't pessimism, it's mental armor. Ancient Stoics would regularly visualize losing their status, their health, even their lives. Why? Because when you stare down the idea of loss, two things happen. You stop fearing it so intensely, and you start appreciating what's in front of you with sharper clarity. Take a modern example. Imagine your company downsizes tomorrow, and your name is on the list. Feel the jolt of panic, then ask yourself, what would I do next? Maybe you'd update your resume, call a mentor, or finally launch that side project. By rehearsing the scenario, you've already stripped it of its power to paralyze you. Here's how to practice it. Set aside 5 minutes today, maybe during your morning coffee or right before bed, and deliberately visualize one thing you fear losing. It could be your job, your health, even a loved one. Sit with that discomfort, then mentally walk through how you'd respond. Would you crumble, or would you find strength you didn't know you had? The Stoics weren't teaching us to expect disaster. They were reminding us that we're far more resilient than we think. And when you return to the present, you'll notice something extraordinary. The ordinary suddenly feels extraordinary. That's the alchemy of negative visualization. It turns fear into fuel and taking things for granted into a thing of the past. So tonight, as you lock your door or kiss someone goodnight, pause. Really see what's in front of you, not as something guaranteed, but as something fleeting and precious. That shift in perspective, that's Stoicism in action. And it's how you build a mind that doesn't just withstand storms, but learns to dance in the rain. There's a reason Marcus Aurelius, one of history's greatest Stoic emperors, began each day with a simple but profound ritual. He'd sit quietly and remind himself of what lay ahead. When you wake up in the morning, he wrote, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. But here's the twist. He didn't say this to dwell on negativity. Instead, he used it as armor, a way to prepare his mind so that nothing could catch him off guard or shake his resolve. This is the essence of the third Stoic exercise, morning reflection. It's not about predicting every obstacle. It's about deciding in advance how you'll meet them with clarity and virtue. Think of your mind as a garden. Without tending, weeds of distraction and reactive emotions can take over. But when you start the day by deliberately planting the seeds of intention, you cultivate resilience before chaos even knocks at your door. Here's how to practice it. The moment you wake up, before you check your phone or dive into the day's noise, pause. Ask yourself 2 questions. What challenges might I face today? And how will I choose to respond? Maybe it's a tense meeting where you'll need patience, or a personal goal that requires discipline. The key isn't to obsess over details, but to rehearse your principles. Will you meet frustration with calm? Will you turn setbacks into opportunities for growth? This ritual takes just 5 minutes, but its power is exponential. Consider a modern example. Imagine you're about to give a presentation and your hands tremble at the thought of stumbling over your words. Instead of letting fear hijack your focus, you've already visualized it during your morning reflection. You've reminded yourself that your worth isn't tied to perfection, only to showing up with courage and preparation. Now, when the moment arrives, your nerves don't disappear, but they no longer control you. That's the Stoic edge. You've already lived the challenge in your mind, so the real thing feels familiar, even manageable. Marcus Aurelius didn't just write about this practice, he lived it. Ruling an empire meant facing betrayals, wars, and plagues, yet his journals reveal a man who met each day with steadfastness, not because he was fearless, but because he'd already confronted his fears by dawn. You don't need an empire to benefit from the same discipline. Whether it's a difficult conversation, a looming deadline, or simply the grind of daily stress, morning reflection turns reaction into intention. And when you consistently start your day this way, something shifts. Challenges stop feeling like ambushes and start feeling like invitations to practice patience, to exercise wisdom, to prove to yourself that you're stronger than your circumstances. So tomorrow, before the world demands your attention, claim those first quiet moments for yourself. Sit with your thoughts, name the potential storms, and most importantly, decide who you'll be when they arrive. Because the secret to an unshakable mindset isn't avoiding turbulence, it's learning to fly steady through it, and that begins the moment you open your eyes. If morning reflection is the armor you wear into battle, then evening review is the whetstone that sharpens your blade for tomorrow. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher whose letters still resonate 2,000 years later, called this practice securum judicium, the secure judgment of looking back without flinching. Picture this: the day is done, the noise has faded, and now in the quiet you have the rarest of opportunities to audit your own actions with the clarity of hindsight. Not to punish yourself, not to wallow in regret, but to distill wisdom from experience. The Stoics didn't believe in wasted days, only in days that hadn't yet been learned from. Start by asking yourself 3 questions, just as Seneca did in his letters. What did I do well today? Where did I fall short? And most crucially, where did fear whisper in my ear and steer my hand? Maybe you hesitated to speak up in a meeting because you worried about judgment. Maybe you avoided a difficult conversation to sidestep conflict. These aren't failures, they're data points. The goal isn't to judge yourself harshly, but to spot patterns, like a scientist observing an experiment. Fear thrives in the shadows of avoidance, but when you drag it into the light of conscious examination, it loses its grip. Take a modern example. Imagine you skipped the gym today because you felt tired. On the surface, it's a small choice, but dig deeper. Was it truly fatigue, or was it fear of discomfort, fear of not seeing progress, fear of starting something you might not finish? The evening review isn't about guilt, it's about honesty. And here's the transformative part. Once you name the fear, you can rewrite the script for tomorrow. Today I let fatigue win becomes, tomorrow I'll walk for 5 minutes, just 5, and let momentum do the rest. Seneca wrote that we should retire into ourselves each night, not to brood but to refine. Try this tonight. Sit with your thoughts for 10 minutes, no screens, no distractions, and replay the day's key moments like scenes from a film. Notice where you reacted from courage and where fear crept in. Then, and this is vital, ask, what's one small step I can take tomorrow to tilt the balance? Not a grand overhaul, just a single, deliberate adjustment. Because Stoicism isn't about perfection, it's about progression. And when you make this evening ritual as habitual as brushing your teeth, something shifts. You stop seeing days as disposable and start seeing them as the raw material of a wiser, braver self. So tonight, before you close your eyes, give the day one final gift, the chance to teach you. Because the unexamined life, as Socrates warned, isn't worth living, but the examined life, that's where ironclad minds are forged. Here's a paradox the Stoics understood deeply. The path to true strength isn't paved with comfort, but with deliberately chosen discomfort. Think of Cato the Younger, the Roman statesman who'd wear thin robes in winter and walk barefoot through snow not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Or Musonius Rufus, who taught that enduring small hardships voluntarily is like vaccinating the soul against life's inevitable blows. This is the essence of the fifth Stoic exercise, voluntary discomfort. It's not about punishing yourself. It's about reminding your nervous system that you are far more capable than your cravings for ease would have you believe. Start small, take a cold shower instead of a warm one, skip a meal and sit with the hunger, leave your phone at home during a walk. These might sound trivial, but their power lies in what they teach you. That discomfort is not an emergency. Modern life has wired us to treat every inconvenience as a threat, to reach for snacks at the first twinge of hunger, to check our phones at the slightest hint of boredom. But what if, instead of reflexively avoiding unease, you leaned into it just a little? That's where resilience is born. Every time you consciously choose to endure a minor hardship, you're sending a message to your deepest fears. I am not ruled by my impulses. Consider the cold shower. For the first few seconds, your body screams to escape. But if you stay, something remarkable happens. The shock fades, your breath steadies, and you realize you've just proven to yourself that you can handle far more than you thought. The Stoics called this ascesis, disciplined practice. It's why Musonius Rufus insisted his students sleep on hard beds and eat simple food. Not to deprive them, but to free them from the tyranny of needing perfect conditions to function. Here's the challenge. Ask yourself daily, what comfort can I willingly give up today? Maybe it's taking the stairs instead of the elevator. Maybe it's sitting silently for 5 minutes without distractions. The goal isn't to make life harder, it's to make you harder to break. Because when you voluntarily face small discomforts, the bigger ones, the job losses, the rejections, the curveballs life throws lose their power to paralyze you. You've already met their lesser cousins in the arena of your own choosing, and you've walked away stronger each time. So tonight, when you're tempted to reach for that extra blanket or scroll mindlessly for comfort, pause. Remember Cato standing barefoot in the snow, not grimacing but smiling. He knew what we often forget. Comfort is a cage unless you prove you can leave it anytime. And the key to that cage, it's in your hand right now. Death is the ultimate teacher if we dare to listen. That's the heart of the sixth Stoic exercise, Memento Mori, the practice of remembering your mortality. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who ruled one of history's greatest empires, kept this truth at the forefront of his mind. You could leave life right now, he wrote in his private journals. Let that determine what you do and say and think. At first glance, this might sound morbid, but the Stoics saw it differently. Contemplating death wasn't about fear, it was about liberation. Imagine holding a fragile glass orb in your hands, knowing it could shatter at any moment. Would you clutch it anxiously or hold it gently, marveling at its fleeting beauty? That's the shift this practice creates. It turns the inevitability of endings into a lens that clarifies what truly matters. Think of the last time you faced a minor inconvenience, a delayed flight, a rude comment, a spilled coffee. Now imagine viewing that same moment through the stark clarity of Memento Mori. Would you still sweat the small stuff? The Stoics believed that remembering death strips away pettiness like a solvent dissolving grease. When Steve Jobs stood before Stanford's graduating class in 2005, he shared how being diagnosed with pancreatic cancer transformed his perspective. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. That's Memento Mori in action, not as a morbid fixation, but as a compass. Here's how to practice it. Each morning, as you sip your coffee or lace your shoes, pause and ask, if today were my last day, how would I act differently? Not in grandiose ways, but in the quiet, everyday choices. Would you postpone that difficult conversation, or would you speak with honesty and kindness? Would you scroll mindlessly, or would you linger in conversation with someone you love? This isn't about crafting a perfect day. It's about infusing ordinary moments with extraordinary presence. The Roman Stoics would even keep physical reminders, a skull on their desk, an hourglass by their bed. Modern equivalents might be a screensaver with the words, "This could be it," or a note on your mirror asking, "What's worth doing today?" The beauty of this practice lies in its paradox. By confronting the fact that life is finite, you begin to live it more fully. Procrastination loses its grip because someday might not come. Grudges feel heavier to carry when you realize time is too precious to waste them. Even joy becomes sharper, more vivid when you recognize its temporariness. Marcus Aurelius didn't meditate on death to depress himself. He did it to wake himself up. "Stop acting as if you were destined to live forever," he urged. The same force that brought you here will carry you away. So tonight, as you turn off the lights, try this. Close your eyes and picture your life as a single candle flame, flickering, fragile, radiant. Then ask, did today burn bright enough? If the answer isn't a resounding yes, tomorrow is another chance. But here's the catch: no one can promise you how many tomorrows remain. That's the gift and the challenge of Memento Mori. It doesn't just remind you that you'll die, it reminds you that you're alive right now, and that changes everything. Amor Fati, love of fate. It's a phrase that sounds poetic until life tests your commitment to it. Friedrich Nietzsche, though not a Stoic himself, captured the essence of this ancient practice when he wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati. That one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity." But long before Nietzsche, Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher born into slavery, laid the groundwork with a blunt truth. Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happens the way it happens, then you will be happy. In other words, happiness isn't about controlling life's twists and turns. It's about embracing them as if you'd chosen them yourself. Consider a musician who spends years perfecting a piece, only to have her audition cut short by a power outage. She could rage against the unfairness, or she could choose Amor Fati, seeing the interruption not as a disaster, but as a chance to demonstrate grace under pressure. Maybe the judges remember her composure more than they would have remembered her performance. The Stoics believed every event, no matter how jarring, carries the seed of an opportunity if we're willing to look for it. When a storm wrecks your travel plans, it's a chance to practice patience. When a project fails, it's a lesson in detachment. Even pain, as Marcus Aurelius noted, is neither unbearable nor unending, so long as you refuse to let it define you. Here's the practice. The next time life veers off script, pause and ask, how can I love this? Not with resignation, but with curiosity. A missed promotion becomes space to explore new paths. A broken relationship clears the way for deeper connections. The key lies in shifting from, why is this happening to me, to, what is this here to teach me? Nietzsche called this eternal affirmation. The radical acceptance that every moment, even the brutal ones, is necessary in the tapestry of your life. Think of a blacksmith shaping iron. The metal doesn't protest the hammer, it becomes stronger with each strike. Amor Fati is how you become that iron, not resisting the blows but trusting the process. So today, when the traffic snarls or the Wi-Fi fails, smile and whisper, this too is part of the story. Because a life loved in all its messy glory is a life unstoppable. There's a reason Marcus Aurelius' private journals survived 2 millennia while empires crumbled around them. those handwritten pages weren't just musings, they were his training ground. The Stoics didn't merely think about wisdom, they wrote their way toward it, one honest line at a time. Seneca, whose letters to friends doubled as philosophical masterclasses, put it plainly, the hand that writes becomes the eye that sees. When you put pen to paper, something alchemical happens. Chaos crystallizes into clarity, emotions untangle, and what once felt like an overwhelming storm inside your chest becomes a map you can navigate. Start with Seneca's blueprint. Each night, he'd revisit the day with 3 piercing questions. What disturbed me today? How did I respond? And how could I meet it better next time? Notice what's missing. There's no self-flagellation, no wallowing in guilt, just cold, clear dissection. Imagine your mind as a courtroom and your journal as the stenographer. You're not the prosecutor or the defendant, you're the judge weighing evidence without bias. Maybe today's disturbance was a colleague's snide remark. Your response, a simmering resentment that ruined your afternoon. The Stoic improvement: next time, ask yourself, is their opinion part of what I control? If not, let it pass like background noise. But here's where modern journaling often goes wrong. We turn pages into dumping grounds for grievances without extracting the lesson. The Stoics weren't venting, they were mining. When Epictetus advised, write down how you'd like to see yourself, then act accordingly, he was prescribing journaling as a mirror, not a diary. Try this tonight. After answering Seneca's 3 questions, add a 4th. What would my best self have done? That tiny shift transforms reflection from regret into rehearsal. The magic lies in consistency. Marcus Aurelius didn't write only on bad days. Some of his most profound entries begin with mundane observations: a quarrel at court, the sting of betrayal, even the annoyance of waking up tired. By treating everyday irritations as training material, he built reflexes for life's bigger battles. Your journal can do the same. That argument with your partner. Write it out, then ask, where did fear masquerade as anger? The project you procrastinated on. Trace it back to its root. Was it laziness or fear of falling short? Stoic journaling isn't about pretty prose, it's about precision. No fluff, no filler, just raw, unfiltered accountability. And here's the secret: the more brutally honest you are on paper, the less power your emotions have over you in life. Because when you name the beast, you tame it. So tonight, before sleep claims you, pick up a pen, not to recount your day, but to reclaim it. The blank page doesn't judge, it only asks, are you ready to see yourself clearly? And if you dare to answer, something remarkable happens. The person who closes that journal is always slightly wiser than the one who opened it. Stand on the roof of a skyscraper at night and look down at the city below. The cars become crawling ants. The shouting crowds fade into silence, and what felt like urgent crises from ground level now seem like tiny specks of light in a vast grid. This is the power of the 9th Stoic exercise, the view from above, a meditation Marcus Aurelius used to shrink his imperial burdens down to size. Think of the substance of the whole, he wrote, and how your portion is but an atom. It's not about dismissing your struggles, it's about seeing them in their true proportion. When you zoom out far enough, even the heaviest fear becomes weightless against the backdrop of time and space. Start with this visualization. Close your eyes and imagine lifting off the earth, watching your neighborhood shrink to the size of a postage stamp. Keep going. Continents fold into maps, oceans become puddles, until the entire planet is just a pale blue dot floating in darkness. Now, from this cosmic balcony, look back at your life. That argument that kept you awake last night, the rejection letter that stung. From here, they're barely visible. The Stoics called this heliokos bios, the solar view, a reminder that most of what we agonize over occupies no meaningful space in the universe's grand narrative. But here's where modern science makes this ancient practice even more profound. Astronauts who have seen Earth from orbit often describe the overview effect, a radical shift in perspective where national borders vanish and petty conflicts seem absurd. One described it as instant global consciousness. You don't need a rocket to access this. Try it now with a current worry. Picture it as if you're holding it in your palm, then mentally toss it into the starry void. Notice what happens. The fear doesn't disappear, but its grip loosens. You start to see it as a passing cloud in your personal sky, not the sky itself. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily. Ruling an empire meant constant threats, wars, plagues, betrayals. But his journals reveal a man who returned again and again to the stars. How quickly all things vanish, their bodies into the world, their memories into time. When we adopt this lens, deadlines feel less like emergencies and more like brief strokes on an infinite canvas. That coworker who undermines you from 10,000 feet, they're just one thread in a tapestry woven over centuries. The practice isn't about escapism, it's about recalibration. Next time anxiety whispers that everything hinges on this moment, take 3 breaths and ask, will this matter in a year? A decade, 1,000 years, the answer isn't nihilism, it's liberation. Because when you stop confusing pebbles for boulders, you save your strength for what truly deserves it. So tonight, step outside, look up, let the stars remind you, you are both infinitesimally small and unimaginably vast, and that paradox, that's where real courage begins. Imagine scrolling through your phone, pausing at a post you shared hours ago. The likes are trickling in slower than you hoped, and that comment you expected hasn't appeared. A knot forms in your stomach. Why does this matter so much? This is where Stoic indifference, or adiaphora, becomes your most liberating tool. Epictetus, the philosopher who transformed his enslavement into a masterclass on inner freedom, drew a line in the sand. Some things are up to us and some are not. Your effort, that's yours. The applause, the algorithms, the opinions of strangers, those lie firmly on the other side of the line. Indifference here isn't apathy. It's the art of recognizing what deserves your emotional investment. Think of it like weatherproofing your mind. You wouldn't rage at a thunderstorm for ruining your picnic. You'd accept its nature and adapt. Social media validation operates the same way. The platforms are designed to hook your attention, to make you crave that dopamine hit of external approval. But what if you could engage without handing over your peace? Post your work because it aligns with your values, not because it might trend. Share thoughts that resonate with you, not just what's performative. The moment you untangle your worth from the outcome, you reclaim something priceless: autonomy. Here's a modern experiment. For 1 week, track how often you check metrics, likes, replies, follower counts. Notice the physical sensations each time. Is your breath shallow, your jaw tight? Those are clues pointing to where you've accidentally outsourced your self-esteem. Now try this radical alternative. After posting, close the app. Not as an act of avoidance, but as a declaration. You've done what was yours to do, the rest is noise. The Stoics would call this proherses, the discipline of distinguishing between what's within your sphere of control and what's merely a passing cloud. Consider a musician releasing an album. She can pour her soul into the lyrics, rehearse until her fingers ache, choose a cover that captures the essence, but once it's out in the world, sales figures and critic reviews belong to the universe. Does she stop creating if the response is lukewarm? Not if she's practicing Stoic indifference. Her job was to make art. The world's job is to react or not. The same applies to your work, your relationships, even your appearance. When you stop conflating effort with entitlement to specific outcomes, you step into a rare kind of freedom, the freedom to care deeply without being controlled by what you can't command. So tonight, ask yourself, What external thing have I been treating as essential that's actually incidental? Is it a title at work, a number on a scale, the approval of someone whose values you don't even respect? Write it down, then beside it write Epictetus' question, is this up to me? If the answer's no, draw a line through it. That ink isn't just on paper, it's a boundary etched into your psyche. And boundaries, as any Stoic will tell you, are where true strength begins. History remembers the Roman general Publius Clodius Thracia not for his victories in battle, but for how he faced his execution. When Nero's soldiers came to deliver his death sentence, he was hosting a dinner party. Rather than panic, he calmly tasted the wine, turned to his guests and said, "Let us show the gods how a brave man dies." In that moment, he embodied a principle that would echo through centuries. The obstacle isn't just something to endure, it's the very path to your growth. This is the heart of Exercise 11. The obstacle is the way, a concept modern Stoic writer Ryan Holiday revived from Marcus Aurelius' timeless words. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Think of a river blocked by boulders. Does it stop? No. It finds new channels, carves deeper grooves, becomes more forceful precisely because of the resistance. Your obstacles work the same way. That job rejection isn't a dead end. It's a detour to something better suited for your gifts. That health scare isn't just suffering. It's a masterclass in appreciating the body you once took for granted. The Stoics didn't see adversity as unfair. They saw it as the universe's most effective training ground. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events," he wasn't offering consolation. He was issuing a challenge. Use this. Here's how to practice it. Identify one current obstacle, a strained relationship, a financial setback, even a daily irritation like rush hour traffic. Now apply the three-part Stoic reframe Holiday teaches in his book, Perception, Action, Will. First, perception. Is this obstacle truly harmful, or have you labeled it that way? Traffic isn't wasted time. It's unexpected space to listen to an audiobook or sit with your thoughts. Next, action. What can you do within this new frame? Maybe that difficult coworker becomes a chance to practice patience or set boundaries with grace. Finally, will. How can you embrace this obstacle so fully that you'd almost thank it for the strength it's forcing you to develop? Consider the story of Thomas Edison's laboratory burning to the ground in 1914. As flames consumed years of research, he told his son, "Go get your mother. She'll never see a fire like this again." Then, at 67, he rebuilt from ashes, later saying the disaster freed him from old patterns to innovate anew. That's the obstacle is the way in action, not blind optimism, but creative recalibration. The fire didn't change, Edison's perception of it did. Your turn. Pick one obstacle you've been resisting and ask, if this weren't a problem but an opportunity, what would it be teaching me? Maybe the project that terrifies you is the exact thing that will sharpen your skills. Maybe the loneliness you fear is the nudge you need to rebuild neglected connections. The Stoics knew a secret. Life's boulders aren't roadblocks. They're the raw material for building unshakable resilience. And the moment you stop pushing them away and start climbing them, you'll see the view from the top was worth every strained muscle. Imagine standing at a crossroads where every path represents a different version of you, one marked by rash decisions, another by cowardice, a third by indulgence, and the last by fairness. Which would you choose? The Stoics framed this choice not as hypothetical, but as the daily work of aligning with four cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who trained Epictetus, called these virtues the limbs of the soul, each essential, each requiring deliberate exercise. But here's the twist, they're not abstract ideals, they're tools for the trenches of real life. Let's break them down, starting with wisdom. Wisdom isn't about hoarding facts, it's about discerning what's true versus what's merely urgent. Musonius taught that a wise person distinguishes between appearances and reality, like realizing the colleague who interrupts you isn't rude but overwhelmed, or that the anxiety before a speech isn't a warning but a signal you care. Next, courage, often misunderstood as the absence of fear. The Stoics redefined it as action despite fear. When Musonius was exiled to a barren island, he didn't lament. He planted gardens and taught philosophy to fishermen. Courage, he showed, is fear transformed into fuel. Justice to the Stoics wasn't just courtroom fairness but everyday integrity. It's returning the extra change the cashier handed you by mistake. It's listening fully instead of waiting for your turn to speak. Musonius insisted even small acts of justice ripple outward. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Then there's temperance, not self-denial but self-command. Picture a lavish buffet. Temperance isn't skipping dessert. It's savoring one piece slowly instead of mindlessly grabbing three. Musonius ate simple meals not to punish himself, but to prove pleasure shouldn't hold veto power over his choices. Now, the pivotal question, which virtue do I need most right now? Maybe it's wisdom when overwhelmed by deadlines, recognizing that frantic busyness often masks poor priorities. Maybe it's courage to have that uncomfortable conversation you've been avoiding. Justice could mean apologizing for a harsh word, while temperance might demand putting your phone away during dinner. The Stoics didn't chase perfection in all four at once. They rotated focus like a farmer tending crops, watering what's most parched in each season. Try this tonight. As you review your day, assign each virtue a grade from 1 to 10. Did you act wisely when emotions clouded your judgment? Did you choose courage over comfort? Where did justice or temperance falter? Musonius believed this nightly audit, it wasn't about guilt but calibration. Because virtues aren't medals to display, they're muscles that only grow under tension. And the beautiful paradox, the more you strengthen one, the others rise too. Cultivate courage and you'll find wisdom in the struggle. Practice temperance and justice becomes second nature. So tomorrow, when you face a challenge, pause and ask, which virtue is calling to be exercised here? Not as a theoretical exercise, but as a living, breathing choice. Because the Stoics knew something we often forget: character isn't born in grand declarations. It's forged in 1,000 small yeses and nos, each one bending the arc of your soul toward the person you're capable of becoming. And that's how ordinary moments become extraordinary transformations. Between stimulus and response, there's a sliver of space, and in that space lies your power. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned his enslavement into a masterclass on freedom, put it bluntly: it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That split-second pause before you snap at a coworker, fire off a passive-aggressive text, or spiral into catastrophic thinking, that's where Stoic practice becomes real. Exercise 13 is about stretching that sliver into a sanctuary, the Stoic Pause. Think of the last time anger hijacked you. Maybe someone cut you off in traffic, or your partner forgot something important. For a moment, your body took over, pulse racing, jaw clenching, words tumbling out before your higher mind could intervene. Now imagine inserting a pause as deliberate as a conductor lifting their baton before the orchestra plays. That's the Stoic art of prosouch attention as a discipline. Ancient texts describe Stoic students practicing with wooden beads, moving one each time they caught themselves reacting mindlessly. Their modern equivalent, something as simple as counting to 10 before speaking when emotions run high. But here's where most people misunderstand the pause. It's not about suppressing emotion, it's about creating space for choice. Picture a chess master staring at the board. The amateur moves impulsively, the pro sees 3 moves ahead. When you pause, you're not just delaying reaction, you're upgrading it. Seneca described anger as brief insanity, and his remedy was a daily rehearsal. When you're about to reprimand someone, pretend you're about to reprimand yourself. That shift alone changes everything. Try this today. Identify one trigger point where reactions usually override responses. Maybe it's rush hour honking or a teenager's eye roll. Then install a mental speed bump. For Marcus Aurelius, it was visualizing the person offending him as a sleepwalker, not malicious, just unaware. For you, it might be asking, will this matter in 20 minutes? 20 days, the pause doesn't guarantee perfect reactions, but it prevents the ones you'll regret. Now, the deeper question, where in your life is the absence of pause costing you? Is it in rushed decisions that backfire, words spoken that can't be unsaid? The Stoics knew that mastery begins not with grand gestures, but with reclaiming those fractional moments between event and action. Because here's the secret, you don't control the first thought that pops into your head, but you do control the second and the third, and the space between them is where your freedom lies. So tonight, as you brush your teeth, practice the pause. Stand still for 10 extra seconds. Notice how even that tiny gap changes your relationship with time, with impulse, with yourself. That's how ironclad minds are built, one conscious breath at a time. Every morning, before his feet touched the floor, Seneca would perform a ritual that shaped the course of his life. He'd ask himself, what would Cato do? Not as a vague inspiration, but as a concrete blueprint. The Stoics didn't just admire virtue, they reverse engineered it by stepping into the minds of those who'd already walked the path. This is role model meditation, exercise 14, and it's far more than hero worship. It's about constructing an inner compass calibrated by the choices of those you respect most. Start by selecting your Cato, not a flawless saint, but someone whose character shines in the areas you struggle with. Maybe it's Marcus Aurelius' patience under pressure, or your grandmother's quiet resilience. The key lies in specificity. Don't just think, be like Lincoln. Ask, how would Lincoln have navigated this divisive team meeting? When Seneca advised Lucilius to choose a master to follow, he wasn't suggesting blind imitation. He was offering a hack. Borrow the nervous system of someone wiser until your own grows stronger. Here's how to practice it. The next time you're paralyzed by indecision or simmering with frustration, pause and stage a mental intervention. Picture your role model sitting across from you, not on a pedestal, but in your exact circumstances, facing your deadline, your argument, your fear. What's their first move? Would Churchill waste energy complaining, or would he channel it into action? Would Maya Angelou absorb a cruel remark or transform it into art? The answers aren't theoretical, they're actionable scripts waiting to be tried. History's most resilient minds used this technique relentlessly. When Theodore Roosevelt lost both his mother and wife on the same day, he didn't retreat into grief. He threw himself into the Dakota Badlands, later admitting he'd asked, "What would my father do?" That's the Stoic secret. You don't need to invent courage from scratch when you can borrow it temporarily. Like a climber using pre-placed pitons, you ascend faster by leveraging the footholds others have left behind. But here's the crucial twist. Your role models shouldn't just be legendary. They should be relatable. A philosopher king might guide you on justice, but your college mentor who balanced integrity and warmth. That's who you channel during tense negotiations. Try this tonight. List 3 people whose traits you'd stitch together into your ideal self. Then, like Seneca drafting letters to Lucilius, write them a question about your current challenge. The act alone forces clarity. The magic of this practice lies in its immediacy. You don't need to become Cotto overnight. You just need to ask one question he'd ask. Is this fear rational? Is my response proportional? Am I seeing this person's humanity? Over time, these borrowed instincts become your own. Because the Stoics knew something neuroscience now confirms: we mirror whom we admire most. So choose your mirrors wisely, then let them reflect the person you're becoming. There's a hidden superpower in saying no not to others, but to yourself. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who transformed his enslavement into a masterclass on freedom, put it starkly: freedom isn't secured by filling your desires, but by destroying them. What if the key to contentment wasn't getting what you want, but systematically unlearning the wanting itself? That's the radical premise of Exercise 15, Preemptive Rejection, the practice of deliberately denying yourself cravings before they take root. Picture walking past a bakery, the scent of fresh croissants wrapping around you like a temptation. Most people would either indulge or white-knuckle their way past. The Stoic, they'd step inside, inhale deeply, then walk out empty-handed, not to punish themselves, but to prove a point: I am not ruled by my senses. This isn't about deprivation, it's about immunization. Just as a vaccine introduces a weakened virus to build immunity, preemptive rejection exposes you to small doses of desire to strengthen resistance against larger ones. The ancient Stoics called this ascesis discipline as training. When Epictetus advised his students to occasionally drink only water when wine was available, or wear thin cloaks in winter, he wasn't promoting suffering. He was demonstrating that luxury's grip weakens each time you consciously loosen your fingers. Modern life bombards us with engineered cravings: the dopamine hits of social media, the pressure to upgrade perfectly functional gadgets, the endless scroll of just one more episode. But here's the paradox: the more you indulge, the hungrier you become. Try this today. Identify one harmless desire: a second cup of coffee you don't need, the urge to check notifications during work, even hitting snooze one extra time, and veto it. Not with resentment, but with the quiet confidence of someone reclaiming territory. The goal isn't to eliminate joy, it's to expose the lie that joy depends on indulgence. Marcus Aurelius practiced this by eating plain food, even as emperor, not because he disliked flavor, but to remember that pleasure is optional. Now, the deeper question: what craving have you been treating as a need? That afternoon snack, the constant validation of replies to your texts. Epictetus warned that unchecked desires are like creditors. The more you borrow, the more they own you. But each no is a repayment, shrinking their claim on your attention. So tonight, when you reach for your phone before bed, pause, place it back on the charger. In that tiny victory, you'll find something far richer than distraction: the quiet thrill of sovereignty. And that's how you train your mind to hunger not for more, but for enough. Imagine your closet, stuffed with clothes you never wear, your calendar packed with events you dread, your phone cluttered with apps that drain your attention. Now picture Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who advised a wealthy friend: it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. What if true abundance wasn't about adding, but subtracting? This is the heart of Exercise 16, the Art of Subtraction, where minimalism becomes more than an aesthetic. It's a deliberate practice in mental freedom. The Stoics understood that possessions and commitments aren't neutral. They demand fragments of your attention, your energy, your peace. Every unworn jacket in your closet whispers you could be better dressed. Every obligatory social event murmurs you should be more liked. Seneca, who amassed wealth only to give it away, saw through the illusion. Wealth is the slave of the wise, he wrote, the master of the fool. The difference lies not in what you own, but in what owns you. Start small. Today, remove one thing, not because it's broken or useless, but because it's unnecessary. Delete an app that hijacks your focus. Cancel a subscription that no longer serves you. Clear a single drawer and feel the weight lift. This isn't decluttering, it's reclaiming sovereignty. The ancient Stoics practiced this through voluntary poverty, temporarily living with only essentials to prove happiness didn't hinge on extras. You needn't sleep on the floor like Diogenes, but try this experiment. Pack away half your dishes for a week. Notice how the remaining plates suddenly feel ample, even luxurious. That's the paradox of subtraction. It multiplies satisfaction. Now, the pivotal question: what can I remove to gain freedom? Not just physical objects, but mental burdens too. The guilt over an unfinished project, let it go. The pressure to maintain an outdated image, strip it bare. Marcus Aurelius journaled about unlearning unnecessary opinions like shedding heavy armor. Each release creates space for deeper focus, for unexpected opportunities, for breathing room in a suffocating world. Consider the Japanese concept of ma, the beauty of empty space in art and life. A vase's elegance lies in its hollow center. A song's power lies in the pauses between notes. Your mind works the same way. Constant input leaves no room for insight. That's why the Stoics championed otium, leisure not as laziness, but as sacred emptiness where wisdom grows. So tonight, walk through your home with Stoic eyes, not asking what do I need, but what can I dare to release. The answer might surprise you. That stack of unread books gathering dust. Donate them and feel the relief of unrealized expectations dissolving. The committee role you took out of obligation, resign with grace. Each subtraction is an act of defiance against consumerism, against busyness as a badge of honor, against the lie that more equals better. Seneca warned that chasing riches often leaves us poorer in what matters, but the reverse is also true. Removing the inessential makes what remains rich beyond measure. And that's the alchemy of Stoic minimalism, not loss but liberation. One deliberate no at a time. Fear isn't a wall, it's a door, and the Stoics knew the only way through was to turn the handle yourself. Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, laid out a truth we often avoid. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. That knot in your stomach before a difficult conversation. The dread of rejection when pitching an idea. Those shadows loom large until you step into them. This is the essence of exercise 17, fear exposure, the deliberate practice of leaning into discomfort like a muscle being stretched, not torn, but strengthened. Start with Seneca's prescription for courage. Associate with those who will make you better. Welcome those you can improve. Notice what he doesn't say. Wait until you feel ready. The Stoics treated fear like a fever. The remedy wasn't avoidance but controlled exposure to build immunity. Think of it as psychological vaccination. If public speaking terrifies you, start by voicing an opinion in a small meeting before tackling a keynote. If rejection stings, practice asking for minor favors where the stakes feel low. The key lies in progression, not leaping into the abyss, but descending step by step until your eyes adjust to the dark. Here's how to practice it today. Grab a sheet of paper and divide it into 2 columns. On the left, list fears ranked from mild unease to white-knuckle terror. Maybe sending a risky text sits at the top, while skydiving anchors the bottom. On the right, craft a corresponding exposure ladder, concrete actions that gently escalate the challenge. For the text, it might look like 1. Draft the message but don't send it. 2. Send to a trusted friend first. 3. Hit send to the intended recipient. The goal isn't to eradicate fear, but to rewire your relationship with it. Seneca's letters reveal a man who didn't just theorize about courage, he lived it. Exiled to Corsica under brutal conditions, he didn't beg for mercy. He studied the landscape, wrote treatises, and later remarked, "A gem cannot be polished without friction." That's the Stoic secret. Fear isn't your enemy. It's the whetstone sharpening your resilience. Modern psychology confirms this exposure therapy works because it teaches the nervous system that the anticipated catastrophe rarely materializes. The heartbeat slows, the palms stop sweating, and what once felt like a cliff's edge becomes solid ground. So tonight, pick one rung on your ladder, the lowest one. Not the fear that paralyzes, but the one that merely whispers this might feel awkward. Then act, not recklessly, but with the precision of a scientist running an experiment. Record the results. Did the world end? Did you survive? More importantly, did you discover that the fear itself was often the worst part? That's how you turn trembling into tenacity. Because courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the quiet realization that you can tremble and still step forward. And each step, that's where unshakable confidence begins. Standing in the middle of an argument, hearing your own voice rise with frustration. What if you could step outside yourself for just a moment? Observe the scene like a stranger watching from the corner of the room, noting the flushed cheeks, the clenched fists, the words spoken more sharply than intended. This is the power of the third-person perspective, a technique Marcus Aurelius used so masterfully that his private journals read like letters addressed to a wiser version of himself. When you're offended by someone's rudeness, he wrote, ask yourself, what would Hercules say if he saw this? Not to minimize your feelings, but to reveal the gap between reaction and reason. The Stoics called this process the art of self-observation. Imagine you're a scientist studying your own behavior under a microscope. That coworker who interrupted you in the meeting, did your irritation stem from their rudeness or from your own unmet need for respect? The ancient texts describe philosophers like Epictetus practicing this detachment daily, visualizing their actions as if reflected in a still pond. Modern psychology confirms its value. Studies show that people who reflect on their experiences in the third person make wiser decisions, regulate emotions better, and even recover from setbacks faster. Here's how to practice it tonight. Replay one key moment from your day, a success, a failure, or an ordinary interaction, but watch it like a movie scene starring someone else. Notice the body language, the tone shifts, the choices made. Then ask, what advice would I give this person if they asked for help? The magic lies in the shift. When you stop saying, I was wronged, and start saying, he reacted defensively, the emotional charge dissipates. You become both the player and the coach, the actor and the critic. Marcus Aurelius took this further. He'd imagine his heroes looking over his shoulder figures like Socrates or his Stoic teacher Junius Rusticus asking, would they approve of this choice? You don't need ancient philosophers for this. Your own role models work just as well. Picture your most grounded friend watching you stress over a trivial mistake. Would they nod in understanding or gently point out your catastrophizing? That's the third-person lens. It doesn't erase emotions. It puts them in proper proportion. Try this experiment. For the next 24 hours, assign yourself an invisible observer. Every few hours, mentally step back and narrate your actions in third person. She's scrolling social media again, avoiding the report. He's biting his tongue rather than setting a boundary. No judgment, just observation. What patterns emerge? Often, the mere act of witnessing your behavior changes it. Like a child who stops misbehaving when they realize they're being watched. Your higher self steps forward when you shine this light. The Stoics knew something we often forget. We're not single entities but collections of selves, the impulsive one, the wise one, the fearful one. The third-person perspective is the bridge between them. It's how the version of you that knows better guides the version that feels too much. And in that space between observation and action, something extraordinary happens. You stop being ruled by your first instincts and start responding with the clarity of someone who's seen this play before. So tonight, as you replay the day's scenes, watch them not as the star, but as the director. Because sometimes the wisest voice in the room is the one that whispers, "Let's try that take again." Gratitude gets watered down in modern self-help, reduced to platitudes about counting blessings or forced positivity. But the Stoics, especially Epictetus, dug deeper. They treated gratitude not as a passive feeling, but as an active rebellion against our restless dissatisfaction. Picture two travelers. One obsesses over the hotel's missing minibar, while the other marvels that there's a bed at all after miles of rocky roads. The Stoics were the second traveler. Epictetus, born into slavery, knew luxury wasn't guaranteed, yet he taught that freedom flourishes when we stop craving what we lack and start seeing what's already ours. Here's the radical shift. Modern gratitude often focuses on adding appreciation to an already comfortable life. The Stoics practiced gratitude by subtracting expectations. When your phone battery dies, frustration comes from the unspoken belief it should stay charged. Epictetus would ask, where was it written that technology owes you reliability? Real gratitude begins when we release the shoulds and meet reality as it is, not as we demand it to be. After his exile, Seneca wrote to a friend, "This is what I've lost. Fine, but look, this is what remains." That pivot from loss to inventory is the essence of Stoic gratitude. Try this tonight, not as a fluffy exercise, but as mental archaeology. List 3 Stoic gratitudes, but with a twist. Focus on things you typically take for granted as entitlements. Running water, a lock on your door, the ability to read these words. Epictetus trained his students to mentally strip away comforts to jolt them awake. What if this vanished tomorrow? Not to breed fear, but to spotlight the miracle of its presence today. Modern positivity says, be thankful for sunshine. Stoicism whispers, be thankful you have eyes that still see it. The discipline lies in repetition. Musonius Rufus made his students sleep on the ground periodically, not to punish them, but to ensure they'd never dread it. Your daily gratitude list works the same way. When you write, "I'm grateful for my health," follow it with, "because I know it's borrowed, not owned." That shift turns appreciation into preparation. You're not just acknowledging a gift, you're rehearsing how to release it gracefully if fate demands. Here's the litmus test. Does your gratitude soften you or strengthen you? Sugar-coated positivity can become a crutch, a way to avoid life's sharp edges. Stoic gratitude sharpens your vision instead. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Take full account of what excels in appearance," he wasn't ignoring suffering, he was refusing to let it monopolize his attention. Even in grief, he noted the way sunlight still fell across the floorboards. That's the balance, holding pain in one hand and wonder in the other. So tonight, as you lie in bed, try Epictetus' brutal but liberating question. What if I woke up tomorrow with only what I thanked the universe for today? Suddenly, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. The pillow under your head isn't just fabric, it's a temporary mercy. The silence isn't emptiness, it's a reprieve. And that's how gratitude stops being a mood and starts being a lens. One that lets you see the world as it is, fragile and fleeting, and love it fiercely anyway. Every thought that enters your mind comes wearing a disguise, some as truths, others as imposters. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher whose teachings survived his own enslavement, gave humanity one of its most potent mental tools, the discipline of assent. Men are disturbed not by things, he wrote, but by the views they take of them. In other words, between an event and your reaction lies a hidden checkpoint, a moment where you decide whether to stamp a thought as fact or fiction. Most people let impressions waltz into their mental halls unchallenged. The Stoic, they stand guard at the door with a lantern, examining each one before granting entry. Imagine waking to an email where your boss writes, "We need to talk." Instantly, your heart races, you're convinced it's about that mistake last week. But pause, that conviction isn't reality. It's an impression, a story you've authored based on fear. Epictetus would call this proherses, the power to withhold assent from unverified thoughts. Modern psychology confirms this. Our brains are prediction machines, constantly filling gaps with worst-case scenarios. The discipline of assent interrupts this autopilot, asking, is this thought a guest or a gatecrasher? Here's how to practice it. The next time a storm of worry brews, say, a friend's delayed reply spirals into "they're angry with me." Interrogate the evidence. What tangible proof exists? Could alternate explanations fit? Maybe their phone died, maybe they're overwhelmed. The Stoics weren't teaching denial, they were advocating for due process. Marcus Aurelius journaled about this nightly, dissecting which impressions he'd wrongly labeled as truths. Strip away the legend that encrusts them, he advised. Like scraping rust off a blade to reveal the steel beneath, consider social media's minefield. You post a photo, and the likes trickle in slower than usual. The unchecked impression, no one cares, but apply the discipline of assent. Is that a fact, or is it a child's whisper of insecurity? What if the algorithm buried your post? What if people are simply busy? Epictetus warned that unexamined impressions are like unpaid debts. They accrue interest in anxiety. But when you challenge them, you reclaim your peace. Now the pivotal question, what false belief have I been assenting to lately? Is it the idea that your worth hinges on productivity? That comfort equals safety. These aren't truths, they're mental habits reinforced by repetition until they feel like laws. The Stoics called them dogmata, unquestioned assumptions that chain us. Your task isn't to eradicate thoughts, but to deputize them. When a thought whispers you're not ready, ask, says who? When fear insists this will end badly, counter, or it might not. Seneca practiced this by rehearsing adversity daily, not to dwell in gloom but to expose exaggerated fears as paper tigers. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality, he noted. That's the gift of the discipline of assent. It doesn't just reduce suffering, it reveals how much of it was self-inflicted. So tonight, as you replay the day's mental tape, watch for moments when you granted automatic asylum to uninvited thoughts. Then imagine Epictetus at your shoulder, handing you the lantern. The next time an impression knocks, you'll know what to ask, who sent you, and where's your proof. That's how you stop being a prisoner of your perceptions and start becoming their editor-in-chief. Cato the Younger didn't just preach integrity, he built obstacle courses for his character. When walking through Rome's bustling streets, he'd deliberately take the longer route past taverns and hecklers, not to avoid them, but to practice keeping his composure amid chaos. The Stoics called these intentional challenges agons, small arenas where virtue could be tested and strengthened like a muscle. Exercise 21 isn't about waiting for life to throw curveballs, it's about pitching them to yourself. Think of it like a video game's training mode. You don't start on the final boss, you level up through progressively harder stages. A modern agon might be as simple as letting someone cut in line at the grocery store without reacting, or intentionally wearing an unfashionable outfit to confront vanity. The goal isn't self-punishment, it's calibration. When Epictetus advised, if you want to be steady, prepare to be shaken, he was prescribing deliberate discomfort as the antidote to fragility. Here's how to design your Stoic test this week. Pick one virtue you want to fortify, say, patience, and engineer a low-stakes scenario to exercise it. Could you drive the speed limit in the slow lane without frustration? Could you listen fully to a long-winded colleague without interrupting? Cato's genius lay in his recognition that integrity isn't revealed in grand gestures but in these microscopic moments. He'd even test his honesty by returning extra change to street vendors, not because the coins mattered, but because the habit did. Consider the story of Zeno, founder of Stoicism, who lost his fortune in a shipwreck. Instead of despairing, he saw it as an unplanned agon, a chance to prove his philosophy wasn't just theoretical. Your challenges don't need to be so dramatic. Maybe it's resisting the urge to correct someone's minor factual error, or sitting with silence instead of filling it with small talk. The key is to choose tests that stretch but don't break you, like a trainer adding weight in careful increments. Now the pivotal question: what's one edge of your comfort zone that's ripe for expansion? If courage feels shaky, strike up a conversation with a stranger. If temperance wavers, skip dessert not with resentment but as a quiet victory. Record the results each night. Did the test reveal hidden strength or a tender spot needing work? Marcus Aurelius journaled about his daily trials like a scientist logging experiments, not to judge himself, but to track progress. The beauty of these self-imposed trials lies in their reversibility. Fail a test, reset and retry tomorrow. Pass with flying colors, level up. Unlike life's unpredictable blows, agons let you fail safely, learn relentlessly, and ultimately forge a mind that doesn't just endure storms but welcomes them as sparring partners. So this week, don't just wait for challenges, challenge yourself. Because the person who walks out of the arena they built is always stronger than the one who wandered in by accident. Imagine holding a lantern in a vast, dark field. The light only reaches so far, illuminating a small circle around you. Everything beyond that remains shrouded in shadow. That's the Stoic concept of the circle of influence, a principle Epictetus framed with brutal clarity. Some things are within our power, while others are not. Your power doesn't lie in how far the light could reach, but in how brightly it shines where you stand. Modern thinker Stephen Covey later echoed this in his famous circles of concern versus influence, but the Stoics were there first, mapping the terrain of human agency with unflinching precision. Start by drawing two mental circles. The outer ring holds everything that grabs your attention but defies your control: the weather, traffic jams, other people's opinions, the stock market. The inner circle, that's your domain of real sway, your decisions, your efforts, your reactions. Most people exhaust themselves chasing shadows in the outer ring, straining to change what was never theirs to command. The Stoic redirects that energy inward, not out of resignation but out of strategy. When Epictetus said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them," he wasn't preaching passivity. He was offering a battlefield map, one that shows where your arrows will actually land. Consider a project team where deadlines keep shifting. You could rage against management's indecision outer circle, or you could focus on what's yours, refining your portion of the work, communicating proactively, even using the delay to polish details inner circle. The outcome might not change, but your peace of mind and professional growth will. History's most resilient figures operated this way. Viktor Frankl, imprisoned in Auschwitz, wrote that while the Nazis controlled his body, they'd never command his mind. His inner circle remained unbreached. That's the Stoic secret. Influence compounds when you stop spilling it where it won't take root. Here's the practice for 1 week. Carry a notebook. Each time you feel frustration rising, jot down the trigger, then categorize it, inner or outer circle. If it's outer, visualize placing it gently beyond your lantern's glow. If it's inner, brainstorm one actionable step. A delayed flight outer becomes time to read or plan. A friend's criticism outer transforms into a chance to examine your own standards inner. Slowly, you'll notice a shift, less shaking fists at the storm, more adjusting sails. Epictetus, born a slave, knew true freedom wasn't about controlling the world but mastering where you invest your attention. Modern life bombards us with illusionary control, endless news cycles, social media arguments, obsession over metrics. But the Stoic asks a sharper question. Does this deserve a place in my circle, or is it just noise? Because influence isn't about reach, it's about precision. And when you stop scattering your energy like seeds on stone, you'll find the ones planted in fertile soil grow taller than you ever imagined. Your breath is the only moment you ever truly own, this heartbeat, this inhale, this slow release. Marcus Aurelius knew this when he wrote, "Concentrate every minute on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness, while breathing calmly and allowing your mind to fully inhabit the present." The Stoics didn't just philosophize about the present moment, they anchored themselves to it through something far more tangible, the rhythm of their own lungs. This is exercise 23, the Stoic Breath, a practice so simple it's often overlooked, yet so potent it can dissolve panic, sharpen focus, and tether you to reality when emotions threaten to sweep you away. Think of your breath as an internal metronome, a steady pulse beneath life's chaos. When stress hijacks your nervous system, heart racing, thoughts spiraling, your breath is the lever you can pull to slow the runaway train. The Stoics understood what modern science now confirms. Controlled breathing doesn't just reflect your state of mind, it directly shapes it. Deep diaphragmatic breaths trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, flipping the switch from fight or flight to rest and digest. Marcus Aurelius practiced this during the Marcomannic Wars, pausing between battles to steady himself with deliberate inhales, not to escape the carnage, but to meet it with clarity. Here's how to wield this tool today. When tension mounts, a heated argument, a looming deadline, stop. Close your eyes if possible. Inhale for 4 counts, feeling the air fill your belly like a balloon. Hold for 4, exhale for 6, as if blowing out a candle across the room. Repeat for just 1 minute. This isn't meditation, it's mental recalibration. The extended exhale is key. It's the body's brake pedal, signaling safety to your primal brain. Ancient Stoics paired this with a mantra, "This breath is my anchor." The next can wait. Consider a modern gladiator's arena, public speaking. Research shows speakers who pause to take 3 deep breaths before stepping on stage outperform those who don't, not because their content is better, but because their minds are clearer. The Stoic breath works the same way in traffic jams, hospital waiting rooms, or any moment where the world feels like it's spinning too fast. It's not about eliminating stress, it's about refusing to let stress eliminate you. Marcus often journaled about the fleeting nature of time, comparing life to a single breath taken by the universe. That perspective shifts everything. When you consciously breathe, you're not just oxygenating your blood, you're reclaiming sovereignty over the only slice of time you can truly command, now. So today, when the inbox pings or tempers flare, don't just react. Breathe like a Stoic, with intention, with rhythm, with the quiet certainty that this breath, this moment, is where your power lies. And the next one, it can wait its turn. Close your eyes and picture the most unshakable person you can imagine, someone who meets chaos with calm, injustice with integrity, and loss with quiet resolve. The Stoics called this archetype the sage, the living embodiment of perfected wisdom. Seneca described them as someone who bears adversity with even temper and prosperity with moderation. not because they're immune to emotion, but because they've mastered the art of directing it. This final exercise isn't about idolizing perfection. It's about borrowing the sage's eyes to see your own challenges anew. Think of it like mental time travel. When you're stuck in a heated argument or paralyzed by indecision, pause and ask, what would the sage do here, not as a vague inspiration, but as a precise thought experiment? Would they obsess over things outside their control, or focus on crafting the best possible response? Would they seek revenge for a slight, or recognize the offender's ignorance as its own punishment? The sage doesn't magically erase problems, they reveal the hidden paths through them. Seneca put it bluntly, a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. Here's how to practice it. The next time you face a dilemma, big or small, stage a mental council. Imagine the sage sitting across from you, their presence radiating quiet assurance. Present your situation, the job offer you're afraid to take, the apology you're too proud to make, then watch how they dismantle it. Maybe they'd ask, what's the worst that could happen? Not to scare you, but to show you that even the worst-case scenario is survivable. Or perhaps they'd point out how your fear of failure is really just a fear of discovering your own limits. The sage doesn't offer platitudes, they mirror back your own untapped strength. Consider Marcus Aurelius, who visualized his mentors during moments of weakness. When tempted by anger, he'd ask, what would Antoninus do? Not because his predecessor was flawless, but because he'd internalized his best qualities. Your sage can be historical Epictetus' sharp logic, Seneca's poetic resilience, or someone you've known, a grandparent's patience, a teacher's clarity. The key lies in specificity. Don't just think, be wise. Ask, how would they breathe through this frustration? What words would they choose in this email? This exercise works because it bypasses your ego. It's easier to admit the sage wouldn't obsess over this comment than to confess I'm overreacting, but over time the line blurs. The sage's voice becomes your own. You start catching yourself mid-spiral with, is this how wisdom would act? And in that pause, you find something extraordinary, the power to choose who you'll become in this moment. Not perfect, but progressing. So tonight, as you review your day, don't just tally mistakes. Envision the sage reviewing them with you. No condemnation, just quiet curiosity. What stopped you from rising to this? What will you try differently tomorrow? That's the alchemy of this practice. It doesn't just show you the mountain's peak, it hands you the next foothold. And with each step, you're not just imagining wisdom, you're becoming it. These 24 exercises aren't just ideas, they're tools for remaking yourself, one deliberate choice at a time. Stoicism was never meant to be admired from a distance like a painting in a museum. It was designed to be lived like a hammer in your hand or shoes on your feet. Every cold shower you take, every morning reflection you write, every fear you lean into, these aren't checkboxes on some self-improvement list. They're the chisel strikes that reveal the unshakable core already inside you. The Stoics didn't want followers, they wanted practitioners. As Epictetus put it, no great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me you desire a fig, I answer that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen. That's the secret most people miss. Stoicism isn't about flipping a switch and becoming invincible overnight. It's about showing up daily, like a blacksmith returning to the forge, knowing each strike matters even when you can't yet see the shape of the blade. Every time you pause before reacting, every moment you question an automatic thought, every small act of courage, that's the practice, and practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes progress, so here's your challenge. Don't let this be another video you watch and forget. Pick one exercise, just one, to start today. Maybe it's the Stoic pause before sending that angry email. Maybe it's negative visualization to appreciate what you usually take for granted. Or maybe it's something as simple as drinking water when you crave soda, just to remind yourself that you're stronger than your impulses. The exercise doesn't matter as much as the doing. Epictetus left us with a final gem. Persist and resist. Persist in your efforts. Resist giving in to distraction, discouragement, or disorder. That's the Stoic life in 6 words. Now it's your turn. Share your chosen exercise in the comments, not for applause, but for accountability, because the world doesn't need more people who understand Stoicism. It needs more people who live it, and that journey begins with a single step. Take yours.